To anyone who's observed and followed the Arab-Israeli conflict, the term intifada means only one thing, and it really derives from a period beginning in about the year 2000 going to about 2005, when you had, on a daily basis, waves of suicide bombers by Hamas and other Palestinian terrorist organizations moving into Israel, going into pizza shops, into dance clubs, into restaurants, into synagogues, and blowing themselves up. Suicide bombings, passenger buses as well, that accounted for the deaths of hundreds and hundreds of people, maimed many, many more. This was one of the darkest chapters in the history of a very bloody conflict, and it is unequivocally what intifada means. It means the killing of civilians, the deliberate targeting of civilians. And when you talk about globalizing intifada, it means taking it from Israel and killing Jewish civilians wherever you find them, which is precisely what Hamas has been calling for years. When we talk about it in an Australian context, it's no longer a hypothetical, it's no longer theoretical. We saw the globalization of the intifada at Bondi Beach on the 14th of December. That's exactly what that was. And to have Australians chanting that term, fighting for the right to chant that term, and to have councils giving up publicly funded premises to allow these sorts of meetings to take place, it's absolutely reprehensible. It's very easy for politicians to lay wreaths and offer words of condolences after a massacre. It takes some guts and conviction to do something beforehand to stop it, and that's what we're not seeing right now.
Hear, Alex. Hear. Mate, you and I spoke in the lead up to that ill-fated night down at Bondi, and you know that I've been a very staunch advocate and defender of the Jewish community, and that's something I'm very proud of. Even when people were saying to me, Mark, why do you keep talking about this? I said, well, I say to the same people now, do I really need to answer that question? I find it, you used the word reprehensible, I find it reprehensible that we are now, in the months after the worst terror attack on our shores, warning again against a chant, a slogan that means the death and murder and slaughter of Jews. How does it make you feel, Alex, that we are back having these same conversations in the wake of 15 innocent people losing their lives for simply practicing their faith at a Hanukkah event?
It shows how little has changed, and it shows how ingrained a hatred of the Jewish people can be. And the exceeding majority of Australians are decent, fair-minded people. We've always known that, and we certainly saw that after the massacre, where thousands upon thousands came to the vigil side and reached out to members of the Jewish community to offer support and condolences. But in a way where we're a split, divided country, where there are people who adore this place and its values and want to see harmony and cohesion and people just getting along and enjoying this, the greatest country on earth. And then there are people who want to maim and kill and burn it all down. And we're in a fight for the civilization of humanity, really, and for the future of this country. And even a massacre of that scale, which shocked the nation, it did not cure anti-Semitism. It did not suddenly make those people who were contributing to what happened repent and change their course. So we're in it for the long haul. This is going to be a long struggle. And history has sadly shown that when you have one terror attack, typically you have more. It shows that it's not just a lone individual, a lone wolf, someone with mental health issues. It's part of an ideology, and that ideology, sadly, has vested in this country, and we now have to root it out and destroy it.
Alex, this event planned on May 5, the Prime Minister and the Premier are refusing to condemn what is planned on May 5 and use their influence over Clover Moore and say, look, to the Lord Mayor, you need to stop this from happening. I've certainly expressed my anger and frustration, especially toward the Premier, who said only a matter of weeks ago, you've seen what the consequences of globalising the Intifada are. Does it disappoint you that the Prime Minister and the Premier are happy to lay wreaths and, you know, offer their condolences to those family members of the victims of the Bondi terror attack, yet here they are standing in silence when it comes to this Globalise the Intifada event?
Well, the Prime Minister and the Premier have both been clear, particularly the Premier, in how abhorrent and un-Australian this phrase is, what it means and why it shouldn't be used. But this really falls on Clover Moore. She's got to take responsibility. She's the Lord Mayor. She's a seasoned politician. She expressed great concern and solidarity with the community after the massacre, but as we've said That's pretty easy for a politician to do. But this takes a bit of guts and a bit of courage. Not that much, frankly. Not that much. When you have someone using premises that you're responsible for to call for the massacre of more Jewish people on our streets, it shouldn't be difficult to stop it. So primarily the responsibility is hers, but I would like to see the Premier and the Prime Minister picking up the phone and saying to Clover Moore, do what you need to do. Do what's right, do what's moral, do what's in the best interest of this country and this city. It's not a difficult thing to do.
Out of interest, Alex, have you ever spoken to Clover Moore about this?
I haven't. But members of my community have. Friends of mine who are rabbis spoke to her in the immediate aftermath of the massacre. And again, they say she was deeply touched and affected by it. She delivered a speech, a condolence motion. But once again, when we're dealing with politicians, these sorts of things are routine and fairly easy. It's easy to reach out to the Jewish community for condolences after something horrific which stopped the nation. But we're asking for leadership now. That's what's badly needed. And it's incumbent on Clover Moore to do the right thing and stop this. It's about setting an example, because we've seen over 2.5 years the conduct which is allowed to happen, whether it be what happened at the Opera House or hate preachers on our streets. If we don't take consequences, if we don't take action, it becomes normalized, it becomes incentivized, and then it becomes rampant, and you can't stop it. So this is the point at which we need politicians to intervene and restore some sense to this country.
I couldn't agree more with you. I hate to say this, Alex, but I'm sitting here interviewing you and talking to you, and I feel a sense of deja vu. We were having these conversations, 12 months ago, 18 months ago, and I think that just adds weight to our conversation is this newsletter that's been put out by Islamic State that describes the Bondi massacre as, quote, only a pebble from a mountain, effectively lauding the attack as an example to all Muslims and warning, quote, we will continue to kill. I mean, is Clover Moore, is the Premier, is the Prime Minister reading this material that is being published by these extremists and by these terrorist groups? Their silence is effectively making way for potentially another attack on your community, Alex.
They don't even need to look at the newsletters of ISIS. Everyone knows what that organisation stands for, that they want to murder Westerners, crusaders as they call us, and particularly Jewish people. But if you go on social media and see the lunacy, the conspiracy theories, the accusations leveled at the Jewish community, that what happened at Bondi was a false flag by Mossad or by the Jewish community, it's absolutely sickening. And these aren't just anonymous social media accounts. These are Australian citizens that looked at what happened and could feel not a skerrick of concern or compassion for 15 people slaughtered at Bondi Beach. Their hatred is so deep and embedded. And so we need to understand what we're fighting for. We need to understand the severity of this issue. That's why this Royal Commission was called for, and that's why it's so important. Anti-Semitism did not end with the Holocaust and did not end with the Bondi Massacre. This is going to be a long road and a long struggle. And as we've seen, it's not something which merely targets the Jewish community, it consumes us all.
Alex, you mentioned the Royal Commission. I touched on the fact that Justice and Commissioner Virginia Bell will make recommendations in this interim report to be delivered by the end of the month. What are you expecting from that, mate?
We're expecting to understand what security failures occurred, what failures perhaps of policing that occurred that enabled the massacre to happen, or perhaps didn't take preventative action when it was still possible to stop this.
How though, Alex, can the Commissioner hand down an interim report when we haven't had the public evidence or the public hearings and all that sort of thing? I mean, this seems like an interim report that will be fairly slim on details, given the Commissioner has admitted herself that she's struggled to access the information that she needs.
Well, when Dennis Richardson was appointed, he got to work very promptly in holding private hearings, private meetings with various agencies in asking documents to be produced. And after Dennis Richardson resigned, his team, I understand, continued that work. So hopefully they've gotten the evidence they need to understand whether more could have been done to prevent the massacre, whether the event was adequately resourced by police, whether there were red flags that were missed about these two individuals. We need to understand how this was allowed to happen, how they were allowed to plot and plan, travel abroad, carry out reconnaissance in plain sight, and then carry out a massacre for minutes and minutes and minutes while people sheltered for their lives and lay on their loved ones to protect them with their bodies. There were hundreds of shots fired, and the intervention, from what I'm hearing from the witnesses and the survivors, was too slow. We need to understand what failings occurred and what reforms are needed to ensure this never happens again.
Yeah. Alex, before you go, you know that I consider you to be just a tower of strength for the Jewish community here in Australia. And our dear friend, you're combining with Sharry Markson to write a book about what happened down there at Bondi Beach. I'm sure it's sort of opened up some old wounds, so to speak, because, you know, you've been talking about this, you've been warning about it in the lead up to what happened on December 14. How's the book coming along, mate?
It's going really well. It's been, you know, a very trying thing. As you've said, it opens up a lot of wounds, not only from Bondi, but what's happened for the last 2.5 years. So the book looks at the massacre, but it also looks at the lead up to it, the aftermath, and how we get back to some sort of harmony and civility in this society of ours. And to do this with Sharry Markson, who's a friend and a wonderful leader of the Jewish community as well, and a wonderful journalist, it's something we're deeply devoted to. It's an expression of our compassion for the victims and their families and our deep love for this country. We just want to see this country, again, harmonious and functioning, and to have the forces of darkness banished from it, because what we saw at Bondi has forever changed this country. I don't think there's any point in talking about going back to the way things were. You can never go back, but we have to navigate to something better, something where people can exhibit their faith, live by their customs and their culture freely without fear of being slaughtered at a beach. I mean, what happened was so abhorrent and so absolutely un-Australian.
Alex, I wish we had more people like you in positions of power in this country, mate, because I think we'd be a much better country, and our social cohesion wouldn't be what it is today. Thank you for joining us, mate, and let's hope that common sense prevails and this Globalise the Intifada event is banished from a council building. It should not be up to the ratepayers of the City of Sydney to fund this hatred, especially being levelled against the Jewish community. Alex Ryvchin, we'll catch up again soon, mate. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, Mark. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your support.
No worries, mate. There he is, Alex Ryvchin, the CEO of the Executive Council of the Australian Jewry. He is not only a remarkable Jewish Australian, he is just a remarkable Australian.